The 7 Words on the Cross by St. Robert Bellarmine. Book 2, Chapter 3. The second fruit to be drawn from the consideration of the 4th word spoken by Christ upon the cross. Another and very profitable fruit may be gathered from the consideration of the silence of Christ during those 3 hours which intervened between the 6th and the 9th hour. For, O my soul, what was it thy Lord did during those 3 hours? Universal horror and darkness had overspread the world, and thy Lord was reposing, not on a soft bed, but on a cross, naked, overwhelmed with sorrows, without any one to console him. Thou, O Lord, who alone knowest what thou suffered, teach thy servants to understand what a debt of gratitude they owe thee, to condole with thee with their tears, and to suffer for thy love, if it should so please thee, the loss of every kind of consolation in this their place of banishment. O my Son, during the whole course of my mortal life, which was nothing else but a continued labor and sorrow, I never experienced such anguish as during those 3 hours, nor did I ever suffer with greater willingness than then. For then, through the weakness of my body, my wounds became every moment more open, and the bitterness of my pains increased. Then, too, the cold, which was intensified by the absence of the sun, made the sufferings from head to foot of my naked body greater. Then, too, the very darkness which shut out from view the sky and the earth and all other things, forced, as it were, my thoughts to dwell on nothing but the torments of my body, so that on this account those 3 hours seemed to be 3 years. But because my heart was inflamed with a longing desire to honor my Father, to show my obedience to him, and to procure the salvation of your souls, and the more the pains of my body increased, the more was this desire satiated. So these 3 hours seemed but 3 short moments, so great was my love in suffering. O dear Lord, if such indeed was the case, we are very ungrateful if we find it hard to spend 1 hour in thinking of thy pains, when thou didst not find it hard to hang on a cross for our salvation for 3 full hours, during a frightful darkness, in cold and nakedness, suffering an intolerable thirst and most bitter pangs. But, O lover of men, I beseech thee, answer me this. Could the vehemence of thy sufferings withdraw thy heart from prayer for 1 moment during those 3 long and silent hours? Because when we are in distress, particularly if we suffer any bodily pain, we find the greatest difficulty in praying. It was not so with me, my son, because in a weak body I had a soul ready for prayer. Indeed, during those 3 hours when not a word escaped my lips, I prayed and supplicated the Father for you with my heart. And I prayed not with my heart only, but also with my wounds and with my blood. For there were as many mouths crying out for you to the Father as there were wounds in my body, and my wounds were many. And there were as many tongues beseeching and begging for you from this same Father, who is your Father as well as mine, as there were drops of blood trickling to the ground. Now at last, O Lord, thou hast plainly confounded the impatience of thy servant, who, if perchance he comes to pray, worn out with work, or weighed down with affliction, can scarcely raise up his mind to God to pray for himself? Or if through thy grace he does lift up his mind, he cannot keep his attention fixed, but his thoughts must wander back to his labor or his sorrow. Therefore, O Lord, have mercy on thy servant, according to thy great mercy, that imitating the great example of thy patience, he may walk in thy footsteps, and learn to despise his slight afflictions, at least during his prayer. End of chapter 3.